What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson for Southeastern 14. I'm Brian. He's Jay. What's going on, my man?
A little bit of everything. Just trying to get ready for Christmas.
Yep. And before we get started, we got a lot to discuss. Let's talk about our good friends at Bet Online, which remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contest. NFL, college football, UFC, and NHL are in full swing. Bet Online is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to Bet Online today and remember to use our promo code all caps here on the promo code BLEAV. That's promo code all caps BLEAV, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. All righty. So last weekend, good on you. Called the Auburn cover at home to USC in hoops. Bad on both of us with New Mexico State. Bad on me, Georgia Southern. I forget if you were involved in that game.
I was. I was one
Good.
of those. Yep.
Okay. Good on Texas Tech. That was good. My
Yep.
money line parlay with UCLA and App State was good. I feel like, what a horrible push on Jack State. 3 defensive touchdowns for the Raging Cajuns. It could have been a
Yes.
loss. Could have been a
Yes.
loss. Ooh.
Well, and a lot of it is how close are these numbers been? I mean,
Yeah.
the total on Texas San Antonio Marshall was 52.5 in a 35-17 final with one score in the last 9 minutes. I mean, it just was. And I mean, of course, these guys have got algorithms upon algorithms that generate a whole lot of these spreads. But man, oh man, the numbers have just been so on point in so many of these games to start the bowl season.
Yeah, and we've had our what's become the norm in the last 5 years, our last second opt-outs that we can't really see coming. Frank Harris, I know he'd kind of been banged up there late in the year, but he's doing all the press, the media, talking about his farewell, 7 years, 20,000 and whatever yards, whatever the hell it was. And then the line moves from 12.5 to 7.5 in a matter of hours before kick. And then he ends up not playing. So, man, you got to just proceed with caution on these bowl games because, you know, you think you know who's going to be in uniform, and then 10 minutes before the game or an hour before the game, you find out differently. So I would just say proceed with caution with your amounts. But we're here to talk ball games, and so we're going to. Now, we don't have an SEC team in a bowl game for another 6 days, but we will get to that bowl game, which is A&M and Oklahoma State here shortly. But let's start with a couple we've got here in the next few days. So tonight, as we're recording here early Thursday afternoon, we've got the Boca Raton Bowl tonight with the Cuse in South Florida, and tomorrow we've got Georgia Tech and UCF in Tampa at the Gasparilla Bowl, and Saturday we've got the Birmingham Bowl with Troy and Duke, and a couple of other ones that I don't know I have much of an opinion on, but I've got the first 3 we mentioned I do have opinions on. So let's start with USF and the Cuse. And first off, just let us tell you what we do know in terms of opt-outs, etc. So Garrett Schrader, Syracuse QB1, had shoulder surgery. He's done. Carlos Del Rio Wilson is out. I'm pretty sure injury, not transfer. So it's QB3 for the Cuse, but his name is Braden Smith. He's attempted 1 pass in his collegiate career. I really don't think it's going to be him much because in the last 2 games, they played tight end Dan Villari out of the Wildcat package. And, he wasn't that bad. And he can run it. He averages 6.6 yards per carry, and he's actually completed 19 of 22 throws. It's mostly short stuff, but I still think Syracuse can be effective offensively because USF's defense is ranked 131 out of 133 FBS teams in total defense, dead last in pass defense, 124 in scoring D, giving up 34.9 points per game. Where I'm going with this is I like over 55.5 or 56. The over 7-2 in USF's last 9 games. Those 7 overs have had combined scores of 62, 70, 109, 70, 91, 74, and 71. And Syracuse has a 1,000-yard rusher in LaQuint Allen, and Syracuse is going to be missing their best pass rusher in Leon Lowry. So I'm going, I'm going over on this one. Did you have an opinion on this one, Jay?
Well, you mentioned the over in the green room, and my side would probably be USF primarily because of the quarterback, but I like the over better than either side because to add fuel to the over pick, USF's quarterback threw for more than 3,000. He's a freshman. He can play, but like a lot of freshmen, he's got double-digit interceptions, including at least one in the last 5 games. So, guy who's going to put up big yards, but who is also turnover prone, really can score for both teams in a total situation.
Yep, and USF also has former Gator running back Naquan Wright, 775 rushing yards, and as Jay was noting, Byram Brown, 3,078 passing yards, 11 picks, like he said, does have 23 touchdowns and 745 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. So, like Jay was noting, he can score for the Bulls, but then he can, throw picks as well to maybe cuse up the short field, etc.
And I almost hate to go against Syracuse just because of the cosmic debt you and I owe Dino Babers that
and
one
Dungy.
magical year that with
Dino and Dungy.
Yeah, that good gravy, man. They covered more than bedspreads. It was amazing.
And that guy was so tough. He ran like all the time against linebackers and would rarely get hurt. Many times I thought he was done for the day. Nope. Right back in there. All right. Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, UCF and Georgia Tech. What are you thinking here as we're looking at, and we've seen some line movement on this even today because it was 4.5 or 5, and there weren't many 5s yesterday. And then I wake up this morning and I am seeing 6 and 6.5, and looks like now it's kind of dipped back down. All right. Because on a radio show a while ago, somebody was saying a lot of 6.5. So I actually see, Bet Online is the only one we need to be talking about, by the way. And that they're actually down to 4.5 with a total of 67. Your thoughts, Mr. Greeson?
Well, both of these teams are 6-6. Like a lot of these teams that'll play in the pre-Christmas bowls, you're 6-6, 7-5. And you were 100% spot on about at one point in time, trying to handicap bowl games was as much about who's going to motivate it. Now it's about who's going to be in uniform. But I think the motivation here is an important point to talk about because Georgia Tech has not been in a bowl in 4 years. They've got alum coaching in Brent Key. They played Georgia as tough as just about anybody in the country did this year until the Bulldogs lost to Alabama. They like to run the football, and they do it well. Now, they can't stop the run with a hand grenade or a flamethrower. But I think a 6-6 Tech team, I know a whole lot of Tech fans who have already gone down there to this game. They're going to have a good crowd. They sold a lot of tickets because absence makes the heart grow fonder. Malzahn and company with the Plumlee kid, and dear Lord, how many times at Auburn did Malzahn treat a bowl game as with an insulting amount of indifference. I love Tech here, and if you can find it in that sixth neighborhood at some spots, which is what I saw this morning too. I mean, I think Tech's got a real good shot to win this game outright because they really want to be here.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to getting a little money line as well, as I'm on the Tech side. It looks like plus 175 at most spots, including our good friends at Bet Online. And Tech has thrived as an underdog this year. They've been an underdog 8 times. They're 6-2 against the spread with 4 outright wins. And to get bowl eligible, their last 7 games, they won 4 of their last 7, went 5-2 ATS. Now, Haynes King, kind of like our guy Brown at UCF, too many picks, but man, he makes a ton of plays. He did throw 15 interceptions this year, but he ran for 648 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6.0 yards per carry average, and had 26 touchdown passes. And like I was saying with Georgia Tech thriving as a dog, the flip side, UCF, their last 5 as a favorite, 0-4-1 against the spread, and 3 outright losses. Jay and I agree that we are on the rambling wreck of Georgia Tech. So to Saturday, Birmingham Bowl, Troy and Duke. So both teams have lost their coaches. So that's kind of a wash. But Duke has been hit hard by the portal, and who's going to be in uniform? Advantage Troy. And I even think you noted it last week. And I agreed. Troy's just good the last 2 years. They're just really good. Are you thinking the Troy side, as we've got a line? Oh, looks like it's come off the 7.5 to 7 with our friends at Bet Online, with a total of 44. What say you?
There are a couple other games I like this weekend, maybe with a little more gusto than this one. But I don't see how you can play. I don't see how if you're going to play this one and you're committed to being in this one, I don't see how you go against. I think Troy's the only side you can back because, I mean, not only when a head coach leaves and does it in that type of, I mean, it was not the easiest and smoothest exit for Mr. Elko, who did a fantastic job in the first 6 weeks of the season. But when the quarterback got hurt, I think Texas A&M would have been better suited to hire Riley Leonard more than Mike Elko because, I mean, the Duke quarterback made a ton of plays in that first month of the season when they were the talk of college football. And who knows what Duke would be sitting at if they stopped Notre Dame on 4th and 17. Not that I have any previous experience in the last handful of months about your team gagging on 4th and long yardage in a very important football game. Now, I wouldn't know anything about that.
Of course not. And as you say, it's Troy or pass. I also think if you're a money line parlay guy or a teaser guy, I think Troy fits the bill perfectly. But I'm going to lay the 7. And a few reasons why are Troy's won 10 games in a row, 9 of those victories by 7 or more, 8 of those victories by 18 or more. Their last 9 games are 8-1 against the spread. Their last 4 is a single-digit favorite, 4-0 ATS. And here are some of the Duke guys that hit the portal. All ACC defensive tackle Aeneas Peebles has transferred to Virginia Tech. He had 8.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and a forced fumble. Duke starting DN RJ Oben, 6 TFLs, 5 sacks. He has transferred, he's in the portal. And their leading rusher, Jordan Waters, has transferred to NC State. He had 753 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry average. Location advantage, Troy. Troy is also in 5 bowl games, their last 5 bowl games, 5-0, both straight up and against the spread. Motivation is all Troy. They want to finish in the national rankings in back-to-back seasons, which I'm going to guess is the first time in program history. And I know it would be, well, at least at the FBS level, it would be the first time they've won 12 games in back-to-back
Well,
years.
and wouldn't you much rather hang out with a guy named Troy than a guy named Duke?
Absolutely, 100%.
I mean, if you're really looking for the spot on gambling insight, I mean, let's just go
Yes,
first names.
yes. I mean, I don't want anything to do with Dukies in general. All right, I don't have much to offer on these other Saturday games, so I'll just read them off, and you let me know what you think.
I've
Arkansas,
got one. I've got
go ahead.
one. Of all the teams heading into this first big weekend, or I guess the second big weekend of bowls, I think the transfer portal scales are more mismatched in Utah State against Georgia State than maybe any other game. Georgia State, yeah, the quarterback's back, and he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, he
But
is.
Georgia State lost its top two running backs, its leading wide receiver, its third leading wide receiver statistically, two offensive linemen, including their best tackle, and a couple of defensive starters. All have opted out, not playing. Utah State had exactly one enter the portal, and it's still not uncertain whether he's going to play or not. So Utah State's coming into this thing complete, almost with their full complement of dudes. Georgia State, not so much.
And like Georgia Southern, Georgia State was an absolute disaster down the stretch. As I pull it up here, they lost 1, 2, 3, 4. They lost 5 games in a row, straight up and ATS. And one of those was to Georgia Southern, that 44-27. I mean, they just got their ass beat in most of them. 42-14 at home to James Madison, 42-14 again to App State, 56-14 at LSU, and then at ODU, 25-24. You know, their stud running back, Marcus Carroll, I saw where he transferred. I want to say it was to an SEC team, but I'm
Yeah.
absolutely blanking on it. Was it Arkansas, maybe? I can't remember. But anywho, yeah. All right. So you like Utah State -2.5.
Correct.
Okay. I will say, if those familiar with my work, Chris Creighton, I've called him the underdog king for like a decade. Eastern Michigan's numbers as underdogs are unbelievable. However, I don't know that I'd go there with the South Alabama game because they got hit hard by the portal. I was looking into it a week or so ago, and I quit looking because I was like, okay, I'm not backing them this time. Them catching double digits is an automatic play for me normally, but not this time. And I'm pretty sure South Alabama's stud running back, LaDamian Webb, I'm pretty sure he's declared for the draft and opted out. And I'll just let you know he had 1,007 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns, 5.4 yards per carry, and the Jaguars are -17 at Bet Online against EMU. Okay, before we just jump ahead to the one SEC game, were there any of these others like Texas State, Rice, or
Well, the only other one that caught my eye is
Utah Northwestern?
well, I'm on record saying that if you take Kirby and Nick Saban out of the team picture, because I think we all agree those are the two best dudes running programs. Kyle Whittingham at Utah doesn't have to apologize to anybody else in the country for what he does with the Utes. And I know Northwestern has had an unbelievable bounce back year, but if Utah is healthy, they bring a physicality that I don't think Northwestern's ready for.
Yeah, Northwestern does have the motivation advantage, but Yeah, I'm not positive on how many Utah. I think Bryson Barnes is entering the portal, but playing. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like I read that in the last week. But again, like we want to emphasize, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
don't
hey,
take our word for it 5 days ahead of time. I mean, you
the hey, it could be like that Star Trek. I mean, that's what the portal is these days. The beam me up Scotty version of just here today, gone tomorrow. So, and along those lines, I mean, you talked about Frank Wilson's 11th hour announcement. Speaking of another guy who's who's been in college football since like Bo Jackson was a senior.
Cam
Grayson
Rising.
McCall's on the move again.
Oh, NC State.
Yeah.
And Cam Rising is coming back for Utah, and just for doesn't have anything to do with betting, but like, what are they trying? What are they trying to do? These coaches, they're trying to prep for bowl games. We've got early signing day was yesterday. They're having to navigate who's in the portal from their own teams leaving, who's jumping in the portal that they need to show interest in, all while oh, we got bowl games. I mean, some of us don't have a bowl game, but our coach is just busy losing losing recruits to Auburn.
Well,
two defensive linemen.
Hey, now that they've legalized writing checks to these kids, and we've got Hugh Freeze lining up hookers and blow, Auburn's not going to finish out of the top 6 or 7 in recruiting for the foreseeable future, brother.
Right. So y'all snagged 2 of our offensive linemen, both top, I think top like 80 guys. And then one of our 2 5-star, well, we had 3 5-stars. Texas took one of them last week. One of our 2 5-stars was supposed to announce at 10 a.m. yesterday. And then all of a sudden, the on-3 guy, I think Hayes Fawcett, I think is his name, he's tweeting out at like 9-ish, 9:30 a.m. LJ McCray is not going to sign today. So
the Auburn's in the conversation with that guy too.
Well, you were. Y'all were the reason for the delay. Apparently, our NIL guys matched whatever bag y'all had, and finally last night, after a day of stress, he did put pen to paper to the Gators. But Auburn almost took 3 defensive linemen, 2 high 4-stars and a 5-star from the Gators on signing day.
The whole recruiting process now makes me harken back to the wonderful scene with Chris Rock in Hollywood Shuffle, where he walks into the restaurant and he goes, "How much for one rib? I just want one rib. How much is for one rib?" And he goes on and on and on about this, about wanting to buy just one rib instead of a whole order. And then he goes, "All right, I'll give you a rib for $1." And he goes, "Can you break 100?" And that's recruiting in today's world. Can you bust 100? Yeah, sure. Here you go. But I mean, you're 100% right. Actually, I'm willing to bet that of all the headaches that college coaches have to deal with in terms of not only making a living, providing for your family, relying on 18 to 23-year-old young men to make good and sound decisions on a regular and routine basis, the calendar has got to be shuffled. Make the early signing period in July before their senior year. And I know that's when those guys want to go on vacation and whatever else. And this is the early enrollment. But man, oh man, there's just too much, an avalanche of stuff going on that these guys have now got to navigate. And they're making $10 million a year. So cry me a river. But heck, Nick Saban's got to deal with one of his offensive linemen getting arrested for knowingly transmitting an STD. I mean, where is that in the playbook?
What was Michael Vick's name at the doctor's office?
Ron Mexico. Ron Mexico.
And
this is not a victimless crime. Now, I will say this. this is what social media was invented for. Because the fangs and ruthlessness. The first thing I saw when somebody referenced this guy was, and I've got a backstory here, but it was, man, you got to really feel bad for this guy's cousin, because I mean, which is insinuating that he gave the sexually transmitted disease to his cousin. Okay. So, well, and to be full disclosure, I was married in the great state of Alabama. We got our marriage license in Fort Payne. We go down there to fill out the paperwork, and I kid you not, like, question. It says,
20, are you related?
Are you related to the bride/groom? And it's not an end-all be-all, because then the next line is, if so, how? So I guess there are degrees to which they're willing to allow you to be related to your betrothed. So
only in the great state of Alabama.
God bless America, brother. Football and shady matrimonies. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing in the Yellow Hammer State.
Oh man, Saban's got early signing day, the portal. Oh, prep for the college football playoff. Oh, and
replace an offensive tackle who's pulling the Ron Mexico.
Almost did that a second ago. I almost said Ron Jeremy instead of Ron Mexico. Oh gosh, where were we? We were having so much fun. Oh, other bowl games.
Yeah. Now let's go to the Vagisil Bowl. No.
All right. So Vatek Tulane. Okay, I don't know if Tulane has.
Wow.
I don't know if they have a coach. I don't know if they have a quarterback. I mean,
and to be that close to being in a big time bowl game, to then get shuffled off to this one, those throughout history, those have been the ones where Georgia laid. Who was Georgia laid an egg a couple of years? Alabama has laid a couple of Sugar Bowl eggs when they did not get the playoffs.
To Utah, and they laid another one.
It's a tough situation when you're on the cusp of really hitting a check mark dream type of bowl destination, and now you're playing 2 days before Christmas, which, and I know we'll talk about all the SEC games next week, of course. How do you gauge who's motivated in Georgia, Florida State?
Right. And Verse has opted out. Johnny Wilson's opted out. I don't think Coleman's opted out, but I think he will. And Georgia's had a lot of guys hit the portal, but obviously Carson Beck is playing, and FSU's quarterbacks.
Is Carson Beck worth $4 million? Because that's what he's wanting in the portal, or that's what he's wanting in NIL. So that was the report. One of the websites is that he was asking NIL people he wants $4 million to come back.
Well, he's coming back, and that
$4 million.
I don't know that he is, but I don't know what every other quarterback in the SEC is getting paid either. So,
yeah. Jaden Daniels is worth $4 million.
DJ Lagway is worth $4 million.
Dude in Missouri is worth $4 million. Eli Drinkwitz needs to pony up some of that.
Wait, are you talking about the defensive tackle they got yesterday, or Brady Cook, or?
No, I'm talking about the quarterback. I'm talking about Brady.
Brady Cook.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I will just throw this out there. If Kansas is somewhat full strength, I think I would lay 12.5 with them, and that's what they are at Bet Online against UNLV. That's not till Tuesday, the day after Christmas. Which so the SEC team that we do have in action, it is 6 days from now, the 27th, is A&M against Oklahoma State in Houston, NRG Stadium. Bet Online has A&M -2 with a total of 53. So I like Oklahoma State.
I do too. And I know it ended with an absolute boat racing at the hands of Texas, but this may have been Mike Gundy's best work. I mean,
Yeah, which is saying
and
a lot.
it is saying a lot. He's had a whole lot of really good years, but he cobbled together a group that I don't think a whole lot of people even really would have penciled them in the top 5 or 6 teams in the Big 12. And they got to the conference title game. I know Elko is in there. I think there's a false narrative on players, especially in this age and day and age of players, playing hard, wanting to put a good step forward for a new coach like Elko is in the wings at College Station. I mean, those guys are going to vamoose. The NIL's being redirected. A&M's halls right now probably feel more like a morgue than a college football program.
Yeah. And also, Gundy was on a 6-game winning streak in bowl games. Both, hold on, as I'm reading it here. Yeah, straight up, and that's what I thought. 6-0 runs straight up in ATS in the previous 6 bowl games. That was snapped last year. A 24-17 loss to Wisconsin as a 3.5-point dog, but obviously 6-1 in his last 7 bowls is pretty good. And going back to this, might have been his best work. So Oklahoma State had a season win total of 6.5. And just in Phil Steele's mag, as you look back the last 10 years, they had not had any seasons where they hadn't won at least 7. And they had 1, 2, 3, 4, and they had 5 double-digit win seasons. So you got to suspect that was their lowest season win total in forever, and they went over it easily, getting to 9-3. But
and in some ways, you look at, all right, Kirby and Saban, Ryan Day at Ohio State, those guys are putting a lot of dudes in the league, clearly. So they're winning a lot of games. So their production is on par with their prowess. I mean, if you take Barry Sanders out of the equation, who's the best Oklahoma State NFL guy? I mean,
yeah,
and he's now been there a decade. And as you said, half of that time he's winning double-digit games without a whole lot of Jimmys and Joes who are Sunday stars.
Oh no, they rarely get 4 stars. They usually get like 3, 4 stars a class.
And figure out ways to, I mean, Oklahoma's getting 5 stars, Texas is getting 5 stars. And I mean,
Gundy gets a lot out of what talent he gets, and we don't have to worry about our guy Ollie Gordon. He's a true sophomore, so no opting out for Mr. Gordon. And
I was impressed by that kid, and it was far and away a disappointing and humbling loss that when Texas stomped a mud hole in them. But the way that kid was really wearing that loss, I mean, in the middle of that game, he was
livid. He was pissed.
I mean, and was yelling at anybody who had a headset.
Yeah.
Give me the ball and let's try to fix this.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And one last thing to credit Gundy, he might have had his worst quarterback situation ever this year. I mean, going into that Big 12 game, I remember Bowman I think he did have 3 touchdown passes that game, if I'm not mistaken, but he had a 10-11 TDI and T ratio going into that Big 12 championship game. So he had no expectations and probably his worst quarterback situation ever, and still made it to the Big 12 championship game. So we like Oklahoma State in that bowl game. All right, so before we talk a little hoops, any other bowl games that you want to throw out anything on?
Not until we reconvene next week, although you want to talk about the disappointment bowl. Who in a million years on either side is going to want to show up and play in Louisville, USC?
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking of that. And by the way, Bet Online has that game with Louisville favored by 7.5 with a total of 57.5. So I saw the starter USC announced. I had never heard of him.
Right.
So yeah,
Well, I mean, and you mentioned earlier about all the things going on. You think Lincoln Riley's trying to press the flesh with the Chicago Bears or whoever may get a top draft pick so he can keep riding Caleb Williams 5 more years?
yeah, I think that's probably the case. Yeah, and we don't know about Jordan, Louisville's star running back. So I'm not even gonna start getting into the play. Let's talk hoops. So Alabama goes down last night, but they had a 10-0 run that gave them. I want to say it was a 7-point lead there early in the second half, but then they went more than 8 minutes with only one bucket. They end up losing 87-74. Now, you got to consider all the travel that Bama's done here in the last 11 days. So they went to Toronto, led Purdue, which is third in KenPom, but excuse me, I don't pay any attention to AP basketball rankings, but I believe Purdue's number 1. Alabama was winning the whole game. That was up in Toronto. Ended up losing 92-86. Then they go at Creighton this past Saturday. Had the lead good chunks of that game. They lose by 3. Creighton's 17th in KenPom, and then they go to Phoenix. So pretty much a road game, and have the lead parts of the second half, but lose to Arizona, number 2 in KenPom. Their other 2 losses to Clemson, number 25, and Ohio State, number 28. They do have 2 top 100 wins in KenPom over Oregon on a neutral 50. Oregon's 56th. Indiana State is 50. They beat them at home by 22. And then they've got, 30, 40 plus wins by margins of those numbers against a bunch of scrub squads. But Alabama's still 9th in KenPom. I mean, I think they're fine. Either they're only 6-5. They've got to have the toughest strength of schedule in the country.
Yeah, and that's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, though, because you're going to lose 7, 8 SEC games just because of the attrition and the difficulties of going on the road in this league. So you start adding those math equations, and I'm an Auburn graduate, so I'm going to take my shoe off here. But unless you're going 12-6 in the league, you're already now getting up there to 13, 14 losses. So, I mean, that's a scary proposition in a league that, I mean, the SEC will probably get 8 teams dancing, maybe, but it's difficult to see. Yeah, your strength of schedule is great, but you just need one. You needed one of those to be like the feather in your cap to say, hey, yeah, we beat Arizona in Phoenix, or we beat so-and-so in Columbus. I mean,
they do have another top 50 non-conference game on December 30th against Liberty, who's 49th, and that's in Birmingham. But all through SEC play. So here's the SEC teams in KenPom today: Tennessee's 6th, Auburn 7th, Bama 9, Kentucky 21, A&M 22, Mississippi State 32, Florida 36, Arkansas 58, and so. Most of these bracketologists right now have those top 7 teams in the tournament, and Gamecocks are 72. A lot of bracketologists have them in there, so that would be 8 teams. And then Arkansas, which is 58 in KenPom, I believe was in Lunardi's next 4 out, the last one from earlier this week. Then you got Mizzou, 84. They've got a big game with Illinois and St. Louis tomorrow night. Ole Miss is 85, but Ole Miss, have they even lost yet? I mean, they're going to have all these chances to get quality wins in conference play, so they're very much a player for the tournament. And then Georgia 86, LSU 106, and Vandy 235. Good on you for the Auburn call against USC last week, and you're going to go watch them play tomorrow in person with the youngsters, and they're playing Alabama State. And if Ken Palm is close to correct, they will be favored by 30. Will you be laying a 30-point number, or maybe looking to go like minus 17 or 18 first half?
I would lean first half, but Auburn. This year we won way more than we lost, taking LSU in the over. And I mean, it didn't hit every week, but it certainly made money. Auburn at home will make you money, even laying 30 against an Alabama State bunch, because one of the things, their home environment is as good as anyone's in the country and doesn't even have to apologize to Duke. I mean, it is a ferocious and loud venue where everybody is on top of the floor and they're into it and it's cool. But the other part of that is Bruce Pearl's style really takes a page out of what Rick Pitino did in the 90s with Kentucky. He's going to come at you in waves. He may not have the best player on the floor. He may only have the third or fourth best player on the floor, but he's banking his 5 through 10 is going to be a hell of a lot better than your 5 through 10. So they run, they press, they do all these things, and they do them exceedingly well playing in Auburn.
And by the way, I just took a glance at App State, and that L is aging okay. They have not tasted defeat since then and are 9-2 and on an 8-game winning streak. So, yeah, Auburn.
And played a true road game against a mid-major, which, in truth, I think is good for the sport.
Yes. I mean, 100%. Yes.
Because that's going to be App State's basketball Super Bowl of the year. Conference or out.
Yep. So we have tomorrow, we have the Ospreys of UNF are at Georgia. Grambling is at Florida. Elon at South Carolina. Houston Christian at A&M. The only one of interest and big interest for Mizzou, because I mentioned they were 84 in Ken Palm, and they play Illinois in St. Louis. Excuse me. Illinois is 12th in Ken Palm. So Mizzou could use a W here. They do have a couple top 100 wins. They won at Pitt, which is 42 in Ken Palm. Oh, and they won at Minnesota, which is only 88 in Ken Palm. But Missouri could use a win here, and they'll be a 9-point underdog if Ken Palm's, if they're close on their prediction of the game. So we're already 42 minutes deep. Okay, I've got a few NFL. Do you have any thoughts on NFL or any other picks?
Well, it's not a pick, but it is a lament at the plight. When I was a kid growing up loving college basketball, one of my favorite teams was the Louisville Cardinals. I loved Darrell Griffith. I loved the McRae brothers. I loved Milt Wagner. I loved in the 80s, they would dunk on you just as soon as they would look at you. And I loved their style. And even
Darrell Griffith, Dr. Dunkenstein.
Yes, he was, Dr. Dunkenstein. And even when they won it with Never Nervous Purvis Ellison. And all of those teams were so much fun to watch. It is staggering to me the abyss that Louisville basketball finds itself in this day and age. It is just staggering. In some ways, another team I loved growing up was DePaul. Mark Aguirre and Terry Cummings, and those dudes were bad. And DePaul's irrelevant. But Louisville still is passionate about the game and they're still spending a ton of money. And I thought Kenny Payne was going to be a really good hire, but they go 4-28 last year. And this year, they're hosting Kentucky tonight, and they're a 15-point home underdog. I would have never guessed it to deteriorate to that point.
Yes. And Rick Bozich, a TV personality in Louisville and longtime scribe, he'll hit me up on a Twitter DM just asking about spreads and something or stuff of that nature. And so I was going back and forth with him yesterday, and I was saying, is it going to be 65% Kentucky fans? That was just kind of what I was guessing. And he said it's normally 10%. He goes, last year, or last time they played in Louisville under Mac, it was closer to 25% Kentucky. But he said, he said it's not sold out yet. And he told me I think it will be 60 to 65% Kentucky. So that kind of also, and I mean, it's Kentucky or pass.
Correct. I completely agree.
It's Kentucky or pass.
And you look at the plight. I mean, we mentioned some of their great players. Milt Wagner's an all-timer there, and his grandson's going to be in blue.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote this when I saw that his grandson was committing. I was like, there's my one thing to make me feel old today. Milt Wagner's grandson is going to be playing college basketball now.
Did you see that Dre Kirkpatrick's son is playing college football?
Dre Kirkpatrick just left Alabama a minute ago.
He was playing for the kid who just signed with Bama to play corner.
He was just playing for the Bengals a minute ago. I thought that reminds me of Brian Cox, one of the best. Remember Brian Cox from Dolphins and Jets, Falcons D-line coach on Hard Knocks, and he's talking about his kids or whatever, and one of the D linemen was like, "Coach, you got how many kids?" And he looked at him. He was like, "I started bleeping when I was 10 years old, boy."
And somewhere Sean Kemp nods in approval.
Yes. Yes, Sean Kemp did nod in approval. Okay, I'm going to throw out just a few NFL games, and we're going to be done and wish you all Merry Christmas and bid you farewell. So, Baltimore, San Francisco, I like over 47. I know we've got two elite defenses. We got two elite offenses, two elite quarterbacks. Baltimore scored 31 or more in 6 of its last 8 games. San Fran scored 30 or more in 9 of 14, but it could be 12 of 14 because 3 of those games there was no Trent Williams or Debo Samuel. So let's go over 47, Baltimore, San Fran. And you actually like this one. Colts +1 to the D-bag Birds and their owner who will not fire this loser. Colts are hot, by the way. 5-1 both straight up and ATS in their last 6. On the road, they're good. 4-2 both straight up and last 6. Falcons are horrible. 2-5 both straight up and ATS last 7. 3 of those losses were against opponents that were starting a quarterback who was starting for that team for the first time on that day. Oh, and what was Carolina? 1-13. Lose that one last week. I mean,
I got nothing. I've got nothing else to say. Arthur Smith, he's going to be fine. His dad is a billionaire. All is well. He's going to have a fine life, and probably will catch on somewhere as an offensive coordinator. But I'm ready for him to be done with the franchise I have cheered for since Bubba Bean,
Jeff Van Dyke
passed the ball carrying responsibilities to William Andrews in the late 70s. So,
and then on to Len Kane and Gerald Riggs and so on and so forth. And also like the Bengals, -2 at Pittsburgh. Jake Browning against, who the Steelers are starting this week? From Oklahoma State, Gundy guy.
Cale Gundy.
He entered the portal, I think. back to Mason Rudolph, who's only started 2 games since 2020. Bengals have won 3 in a row straight up in ATS. Steelers have lost 3 in a row straight up in ATS.
May have quit. I mean, you've now got players openly talking about, well, I'm not blocking for that guy. So, I mean, wow. Steelers could fire Mike Tomlin.
Wow. Crazy. All right. Merry Christmas to all.
And all a good bet.
To all good mini bets. Let's don't keep it singular.
To all a good cover.
There we go. All right. Thanks for listening. Please spread the word. And we'll be back next week to talk more SEC bowl games as they get closer. And hopefully we'll know more about opt-outs, etc. Because I don't think Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas have made it official, although Jaden Daniels has. For Jay Greeson, I'm Brian Edwards. Bets and ball games with Edwards and Greeson. Merry Christmas. See you next time.